Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lisa Hunter. I'm Associate Vice President of Academic Innovation and Transformation here at ASCU, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. And we are gathered here today to talk about gathering student and faculty input to promote student-centered course scheduling on your campus. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a couple of warm-up questions for you, if you will, in the form of a poll. And let's see if I can just launch that, our first poll. If you see it on your screen, the question is, what faculty insights are you most interested in gathering? Okay, our options are understand faculty scheduling preferences, explore their reception of potential changes to the schedule, and surface assumptions faculty hold about student scheduling needs. The last two are kind of in a 50-50 race and I'll go ahead and end the poll in 3, 2, and 1. So we've got surfacing assumptions about faculty hold about student scheduling needs in a 50%, and then we've got others saying exploring the reception of potential changes to the course schedule. Interesting, we did not have any responses for understanding faculty scheduling preferences. More to explore on that coming up. All right, let's go ahead and launch the second one. This is going to be about student insights. All right, what do you have here? What student insights are you most interested in gathering? Okay, we have understand how students make scheduling decisions, identify barriers students encounter when trying to enroll in the courses they need, and identify what students need from the course schedule to stay on track. All right, well, in the poll here, we've got a couple folks still responding. All right, here we go. Looks like the popular response here is to identify barriers students encounter when trying to enroll in the courses they need, followed by second, identifying what students need from the course schedule to stay on track. And then third, understand how students make scheduling decisions. So we did have some folks wanting to understand that better. So wonderful. We hope to address all of those uh, uh, questions and more as we go on today. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the work that ASCU is doing around course scheduling, we are doing this work in partnership with Ad Astra and support from Ascendium Education Group. And we have been at this work since about 2022 in partnership. We launched an initial project with 11 institutions, starting to investigate how to optimize course scheduling on institutions, member institutions in ASCU. And then last year we were able to scale the project to 20 institutions. Some of the original 11 have continued with us to continue investigating course scheduling and scale the efforts on the campuses. You have the opportunity to learn from some of the members of the cohort today, which is a tremendous opportunity. And in this last year, we have not only refined the feedback and the approach that we've received from the institutions, but have created the resources, one of which that we're sharing today with you all. to help you optimize course scheduling on your campus, and specifically for today, gather faculty and student feedback. So feedback, of course, is essential and integral, and to the extent that we can learn both what the challenges that the students are encountering, but as well as what the faculty needs are, what their preferences are. And we really think about capturing the lived experience, the instructional realities, and in probing our assumptions, both from what the our assumptions around what students want and need, and similarly our assumptions around what the faculty preferences are, what the potential barriers are. It's a tremendous opportunity. And as we look to better understand what those barriers are, we really have the slide here says provides opportunity, but I think that gathering the input really does foster and build buy-in and a shared ownership of the work. And so when we think about gathering student input, as you kind of illuminated here, we have an opportunity to understand how students are making their scheduling decisions. You're going to hear our panelists today talk a little bit about the tension between what they say they want and what the actual student behavior is, and kind of teasing that out. We have the opportunity to identify the barriers that they're encountering when they're trying to enroll in the courses they need. Which includes the conflicts they encounter when sections are full, when courses are canceled, when late sections are added, the unpredictability in the course offerings, and then understanding what students really need to stay on track and how we identify that. When we look at gathering faculty insights, we can think about what faculty scheduling preferences or needs are, and our different institutional contexts are, right? If we have faculty doing research or fostering other student learning experiences outside the classroom, sometimes that's going to limit their availability. When we think about institutions that are in rural contexts, and we're hiring contingent faculty to support some of the scheduling offerings, we really do come up against barriers, right, in faculty scheduling. And so we have to understand how we kind of align that with what the students need and want, and gathering that faculty input is a huge opportunity. And as I mentioned before, we can really help to understand what assumptions faculty hold about student scheduling needs, about who our students are on campus and what they need, and how those student needs are changing. They're changing rapidly. Our students have lots of needs outside of the classroom in terms of balancing their complex lives, as do our faculty, really. And this is an opportunity to align those two as best we can to optimize for a student-ready campus and a student-ready schedule. So today we're launching a feedback toolkit. You'll have access to those resources at the end of the webinar today. And we have both resources to gather student input, which is going to include survey questions, a focus group facilitation guide if you want to have and hold student focus groups. We'll have in-class poll questions, and then we have posters to kind of promote and foster the event and activity. Those will be ready, downloadable resources. You'll be able to customize them if you like. And on the faculty side, we also have faculty survey questions and also a focus group facilitation guide. The panelists here have been using these resources or a variation of these resources, gathering faculty and student feedback. And so you can hear about how they've used the resources, and even better, how they've used the input or are in progress about using the input where and where they are right now in their scheduling process and their scheduling initiative improvement. So now I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have from Chicago State University, Christy Martis, Associate Provost for Academic Innovation. From Middle Tennessee State University, we have Tyler Henson, Assistant Vice Provost for Registration and Student Records and University Registrar. And from Indiana University South Bend, we have Jill Perrin, Provost, and Sally Norton, University Registrar. And joining us, my colleague, Elizabeth Cameron from Friday, who's been integral in helping to put together these resources for you all and making sure that not only did they include the input and feedback from our partners at Astra, but also the feedback from our cohort members. And we've been revising them and working together along the way, and she's going to host our panel. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take down the screen. And Elizabeth, I am going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you, panelists. Yeah, so as I know Lisa said, you all have been working to solicit feedback as part of this work. And so would love to just ask you all kind of a few series of questions about starting from the beginning of that process to how you're now using what you've heard, to really like share some of those nuances of what this process has looked like for you all. So would love to start with just who did you solicit feedback from? When in the process, and what were you hoping to learn? So kind of walk us through that sort of like, oh, we need to gather feedback. Who should we get it from as you were kind of starting this this process? Does anyone want to kick us off, or I can also call on folks?
I can start.
Sally unmuted. She's first.
Sure. Soliciting feedback. This was actually one of the first things we prioritized while we were waiting on the external analysis of our SIS data. We didn't want to lose momentum, and we knew we already had a lot of lived experience on campus that wasn't yet systematically captured. So far, we focused on two primary groups. First, students, because they're at the center of the work. We launched a survey early to better understand how students experience the schedule, what works, where they encountered friction, how the scheduling constraints affected their ability to make progress. Second, we've gathered input from our committee members who were very intentionally selected to represent a cross-section of the institution. They're faculty, advisors, administrators, staff, data analysis analysts, and they've been critical because course scheduling really sits at the intersection of all of these things. In terms of timing, most of this feedback collection has happened early in our process as we were framing the problem. We're now preparing additional surveys for the faculty and the staff more broadly to deepen and validate what we're already hearing. What we're hoping to learn, and this is really what's driving our approach, is to move beyond anecdote. We all come into this work with strong perceptions about student scheduling challenges, but those are often based on our isolated experiences. We're trying to surface consistent patterns and real stories from across roles, from students navigating the schedules, to faculty building the schedules, to advisors helping students work around the constraints. Ultimately, we want a more complete shared understanding of the scheduling experience from all sides so that any changes we make are grounded in evidence, not in assumptions, and have university buy-in.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sally. Tough act to follow, but anyone else have some nuances from their work that they would like to share of sort of like when in your process and how are you thinking about who to reach and why?
I'll jump in next. In our school, we were part of the original Ask You cohort, and during that, we found a lot of data that led us to believe that our students and or faculty, we weren't sure which one, did not like Friday classes, which we're not surprised about. I don't know anybody who would be surprised that students would love to be here on Friday. But we saw our usage, we saw our classroom utilization just trending downward on Friday. But what we did also notice is that we didn't have a lot of options for courses that were Monday, Wednesday before noon. We had options in the afternoon, we had options on Tuesday, Thursday, but we didn't have a lot of options for those students to avoid Friday classes in the morning. Our assumption was that students would enjoy that, faculty would enjoy that option to have some more flexible time because we have a lot of students who commute and work. And so we know a lot of our students are going home on the weekend. But we were making those assumptions based on the data, not necessarily by what we had learned. So we surveyed our students and our faculty very broadly about their opinions on scheduling, but then very specifically on their thoughts on Friday classes. We went and talked to the student government. We went and talked to the faculty senate, our chairs council, went to a variety of folks to make sure that we understood that the data was also represented in the context. And to find out if before we made any decisions about offering up new standard times, if that was the right move, and if people would be receptive to it.
And I'm excited to hear the result, which I'm sure we will get to next, but we're going to keep everyone in suspense. Christy, I think you had unmuted next.
Yeah. Sorry. So we had started the process because we are kind of a university in transition. For many years, we have been institutions primarily serving working adults, non-traditional age students, all within a very close radius of the campus. So they didn't live on campus. They commuted, but they commuted on the Metro line or the L, they were within 10 miles of campus. But we've, in the last I say post-COVID, we've started recruiting and gaining students who are more traditional aged. And so what we were hearing anecdotally was we have two different populations. One wants evening classes and one wants morning classes. And one wants classes, once a week, and one wants classes in a more traditional college format of 2 or 3 times a week. So we really wanted to get a sense of what was actually out there. And the same thing, the purpose of the faculty survey was partly to reflect the information back to the faculty, because many of us, I've been at CSU for 22 years. Many of us haven't thought about the changing. I mean, we all think about the changing nature of our students because we look out and we're like, wow, these are all young, but you're also getting older. So maybe they all look young anyway. So we wanted the faculty to be able to think about what assumptions they had about what made good schedules. And then we could, kind of share both the faculty and the student results with them. We haven't started the focus groups yet. That's going to be a fall project.
Okay, thanks, Christy. Jill, you want to round us out on this one?
Well, for our campus, Sally really covered everything darn well, as you heard. So the only thing I can add, I think, is that we, as I recall, and Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, we intentionally delayed the faculty survey, did the student survey first so that we would have the information from the students to help frame the faculty survey and use it as a tool for awareness, for buy-in, to the survey itself being one of the ways we help communicate to faculty about the needs that our students have and the things that we're hearing from that information. I think it was both smart and it also affects our timeline. So it's something to consider, but I think it's proving helpful. So.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Jill. And one of the things the student survey did was convince, especially those on our committee, that there was an issue, because one of our first questions is, do we have a student scheduling issue?
That's a good start. Should we even be working on this? Great. Well, I would love to, and you all have spoken to some of this a little bit, but I think we all know that gathering quality feedback is more difficult than we would like it to be. We're always like, yeah, we'll gather some feedback. So I would love to dig a little bit deeper into what were some of the mechanisms you used? Again, you've talked about that a little bit, and even, sharing some lessons learned about what was harder or easier than expected. I actually thought a survey would be really easy, but it turns out the IR department took 3 months to review it, or whatever those, and how did you get around, so I would love to hear some of those tips or tricks just generally for gathering this type of feedback and what you've learned along the way.
I might jump in first on this one if folks don't mind.
Please.
What I found really interesting on this was the work we did as a committee, and I was involved in this process. I admit I haven't always been present in every meeting, but in these I was present, and it was fascinating to watch the work we did to make sure we were checking our own biases and that our questions weren't actually leading people somewhere or trying to drive information rather than, and really setting things up in a way that we got all of the information rather than what we thought we wanted to hear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So we really had to do some hard work on that to step back and
make sure we were being neutral and inclusive about all of the things that we might need to be addressing. So that was really the development process itself was a big time time and effort that was well worth it, I think. Sally, you have more to add on that?
No, I think you hit the heart of it right there. One of the things that also came out of that process, and what's been easier than I thought it would be, is the level of engagement we've received. Both students and committee members have been willing to share thoughtful input, which reinforces that scheduling is something people care deeply about and experience very directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that's interesting, and I would encourage you all to check out our previous webinar series around like case making for this work. But one of the things we talk about is sometimes we too quickly yes, it is about the students, but we need to acknowledge that this affects like the lives of faculty members too, and just kind of pretending that's not true is really unhelpful. And so I think that combination of making sure you're teeing up that acknowledgement and the benefits for faculty versus just like the potential pain and change, as well as giving these opportunities to weigh in is a really important combo. So I'm glad you flagged that, Sally, and would encourage everyone to check out some of those case making resources as well. We've tried to design this series to build on itself. So if this is your first one that you've attended, encourage you to look back as well.
Had something small. We tried some ranking questions, and what I've learned is we should never ask ranking questions because both faculty and students really struggle to understand, even with it written out, make one when you most won a class, and 8 when you least won a class, and none of those questions gave us actionable data because it was pretty clear from comparing the answers in that to what they put in the comments that they misordered, or they dragged their top one up and left everything else, and it was just a poor survey design, which maybe is what happens when you have a chemist, a poli-sci, and we didn't have enough people who in our group who are in the habit of writing surveys. So we're going to rework some of our questions and get them in front of some people who have more experience with survey writing.
Awesome. That's great to hear. It is funny though, those small things can make or break it. And that is one of our goals in providing this feedback toolkit is that, we've worked hard, to Jill's point, to like not have these be leading questions, and also to Christy's point, like to use a lot of survey science best practices in them. That's not to say, that, Tyler's example around we had a specific change we wanted to get feedback on. You're of course going to want to like contextualize this and revise this. But our hope is that we can give you a head start on avoiding some of these challenges that have been flagged. Tyler, anything you want to raise on, what was easier or harder about this process? Some lessons learned for the crew?
Well, we did surveys, which I feel like our students are over surveyed. They get one every other day from somebody. So we kept it short, kept it sweet. Couple of questions and one open-ended opportunity. But we got the student government support. And so they talked to their senators, had everybody talk to their friends, and we ended up getting over 1,000 responses on a campus of 20,000 students, which is pretty good for a survey like that. And our faculty survey was equally as successful because the faculty senate promoted it to their colleagues. And so again, getting that buy-in, that why we're doing it, and people wanting to respond is very helpful. But and then again, going to those groups and talking to them about their thoughts after the survey as well.
Great. We have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to interrupt and hear from you all. So Naomi had kind of a two-parter, so I'll ask them both, but maybe we can answer them one at a time. I'm curious if anyone has any insights on how like gas prices have changed remote versus hybrid versus in person, and how that might have impacted some of this course scheduling work. Does anyone have experience with that question?
Actually think this came up in our group conversations. We have a fair number of commuter students at distance. And so wanting to align classes into 2 days a week versus multiple days and things like that are a common thing students are asking for. So that is coming up in the feedback we're getting, at least in that experience. Less about modality, more about patterns for the on-campus.
Interesting. Thanks, Jill. Another question was, how often do you run surveys to account for large changes? Like, Tyler, you mentioned students being over surveyed, but like there's big changes in the economy right now. Like, so I'm curious, there any thoughts on that as far as, how frequent does this kind of surveying need to happen?
We try to be very targeted when we do these sorts of surveys because we don't want them to be so commonplace that students don't want to provide feedback. So we typically don't do something like this until we do have a specific question that we want answered, or there's a specific trend that we think needs to be looked at further. So I'd say it's rare that we survey, but we always take feedback from advisors and students. We get tons of unsolicited feedback all the time, and we take that into account.
We also took the approach with this go around that we incentivized responding to the survey so we could encourage more participation. And we got, I think it was a 19% response rate and an 86% completion rate. So we hit the numbers we thought we would. So that was encouraging.
And what incentive did you look at, Sally, just to give folks a
We
tangible
gave
example? Do you
them,
remember what it was?
yeah, we gave them a coupon for the grill, which is our food services. And we priced it in a way they could get like a drink and chips. So it wasn't something particularly huge, but we think it did improve our overall response rate.
Very cool. Okay, another question, and this actually tees up nicely into my next question, is how do you balance survey data results with registration data when they may disagree? How do you think about further contextualizing the data? So I'm curious, folks, as you've kind of moved from getting some of this survey and focus group results and comparing that to like the more quantitative data sources, what does that balance look like?
I can talk about that briefly because we had a large percentage of our students saying that they prefer in-person classes. And that number, when we broke it out from, especially among the freshmen, but even our graduate students were saying they would prefer or that they learn better in in-person classes. But when we open two sections, one in person and one online, the online one always fills first. And what we are seeing, and that's one thing we are going to focus on in the focus groups, is that while they want the in-person, their lives are complicated, and many of our students are parents and full-time working, and so they want one thing and then they have to have something different. And so we've kind of started asking the question of where do you learn better versus what are you actually going to register for, and kind of asking those parallel questions. And those do seem to then agree in that I learn better here, but I can only take one in-person class in a semester, and all the others have to be online. So I try to prioritize my major class to be in person, and my gen eds are going to be online, or that sort of patterns that we're seeing. Or the graduate students will say, I can take one. You can't get a full load with evening classes because there's only so many evenings. So that's how they're kind of navigating that space. And I think that's a realism that we need to think about as we schedule both, and when we try to decide which third section to offer when they both fill.
Interesting. Thanks, Christy.
I'm going to give you a specific example of what we found was that when in these situations, I think when you see that discrepancy, you got to peel back the layers a little bit and see if there's something else going on. So we saw students in a particular college saying that they wish they had more on in-person classes. And when we saw in the data, they were taking mostly online courses in their upper division. And looking into a little further, the problem actually was the department wasn't offering in-person classes. They were only offering online courses for certain ones. So students had no choice. And so their behaviors and registration were online because that was the only option provided. And so the survey helped us find out that this department, was lacking in offering those in-person courses, and that students had a desire for it. So we were able to provide that feedback to the department and hopefully change some of those scheduling behaviors that will then satisfy what the students want.
Ellie, Jill, any examples from the two of you?
I don't have any examples. I love the examples that have been shared, but I'm fascinated by how much this highlights the need for the qualitative and the quantitative simultaneously, right? It's the exact case scenarios of why you need to do both things because the anecdotes are not enough and the data is not enough, and you need them together to really figure out all the levels of things that could be improved.
Yep. The other thing I would encourage you all to take a look at in the toolkit, I know I'm biased because I helped make it, but one of the to the point of like what we wish would happen versus the reality, sometimes even being like, would you take a Friday morning class? Like that question by itself is just ignoring so much of reality. And so in the toolkit, we have posters with, I think, 5 different example schedules. And so one is like, everything's in the morning. One's like you just show up on Saturday and like get stuff done. One is like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And the thinking being that like having students kind of weigh in on these scheduling patterns will be more valuable than giving them like a single yes or no, because it forces that like talking through of like the realities of their lives and their schedules. And so that was something that was interesting too, because as we were writing the survey questions, we were like, ooh, I think if we were to actually be able to like do a focus group with these posters and have students talk about it, that would be a really informative way to get some of that more like nuanced desire versus reality feedback. Right. Well, I would love, so that kind of brings us into one of our next questions, which is what did you learn? And Jill, you teed this up perfectly. What did you learn that looking at your quantitative data alone would not have surfaced? And we've shared a few examples, but I would love to hear some more. Tyler, what did you learn about
I thought Jill was going first. Sorry, I was waiting.
Oh, sorry.
We learned, we were specifically trying to find out, about how people would enjoy some more flexibility in Monday, Wednesday morning classes. But it was through that open-ended question that we put in there that we got all this additional feedback about. Yeah, I'd love more Monday, Wednesday classes, but I'd also love to have more classes that are required outside the peak time. I'm a working adult and I have to work till 3 and I can't get here during the day. And I really need my required courses offered, later or in the evening. So things we weren't really looking for, that just giving students that forum to provide open-ended feedback, they've had a chance to say that. And so we found a couple more things that we're going to start investigating through that, just by asking one question and getting a lot more than we asked for.
Yeah, I think of the many things we've talked about, and I have lots of notes here about this. The thing that was most interesting is it actually helped us find some things that we could address relatively quickly, some early wins, because there were things highlighted that we weren't aware of. It helped us definitely have a lot more context. Why data tells us what's happening, but we don't have the context of why students are making certain choices. So we got that. And those open-ended responses, similar to Tyler, really helped us recognize patterns, how students are how they're experiencing the schedule, right? What challenges they're facing there. So I think that was those things were really helpful.
Yeah, at this point, we're being intentional about what insights we share and bring back to the committee, especially with the open-ended comments. They can be very revealing. And we then have to filter that information so it goes beyond finger pointing to actionable activity. So we've been discussing not only what we learned, how we are going to share that, how do we bring that information to the broader community. So that's what we're working on through the summer. We're using that time to refine both our findings and our communication approach so that when the campus is back fully in the fall, we're ready to engage more broadly with clear priorities and a thoughtful plan of action.
Lisa just shared a question from an audience member about, did you face any skepticism about why you launched the survey or any mistrust of the data? And I'm seeing the nods, and I imagine that is playing into how you are planning on following up to share the data. So yeah, would love to hear any responses to that question and how it's informing the way you're thinking about next steps for sharing out what was learned.
Absolutely. From jump, there were questions. Why are we even engaging in this process? Why are we conducting a survey? And Jill can probably speak better on this than I can because she deals with the faculty directly. But there was a lot of skepticism with the faculty at the committee level. And as we put out our faculty survey, I think we're going to get additional questions. What do you think, Jill?
Oh, I think you hit it. We had the skepticism in the committee. In fact, I think we intentionally picked the committee to bring some of the skeptics into the room to be part of the conversation, which helps, right? You have people asking the questions that others are going to ask, so you're working together to really identify what the concerns might be and how it might be perceived. There's a lot of folks who feel like we're just trying to I think the wording was administrators like to stay student-centered for everything and think that that means you don't have to consider anything of the faculty's needs. And so having that conversation was actually really helpful in saying being student-centered does not mean that we stop being employee caring about our employees' needs, right? It's identifying what the students actually need because the students may actually need what you want. We don't know, right? I mean, I think we needed to do a lot of work on this. And because we were still waiting on the data to come in, we weren't quite ready to do broad campus communication. So people started hearing about it because the students had surveys, right? And they were hearing about the students doing the survey. So then we started having faculty saying, well, what's going on with this? What are you doing? Are you planning to change things? And are we going to be involved? So balancing that to the timing of these, the choice we made, which serves a very good purpose, led to a different challenge that we also needed to be a little more transparent about. Yes, this is in process. Yes, you will be involved. So they're map that out when you're thinking about this and involve people or make them aware, even if they're going to be involved a little later.
Mm-hmm.
We actually didn't really have any skepticism about ours because we teed it up to all the necessary groups beforehand about what we were asking and why. So they had an understanding of what the purpose was and that we weren't coming at them with, hey, we're going to do all these scary changes and, asking them on the back end. So actually, it was pretty successful in this particular case.
Right. I think we have time for a few more. I'll give you all one more question from me, and then we'd love to open it up. I know people have been putting questions in the chat, but we want to make sure to give you all more time for that. I do have my 5-year-old home on summer break, so we'll see how we do. But I am curious to dig in deeper to give us just a minute. I am curious to dig. You can go outside. Have fun. I am curious to dig deeper into like the plan for sharing back and some of the thinking that's going into that about like how much do we share, when, how. So yeah, would love to hear any. It sounds like that's still in the process in a lot of ways, but yeah, let us into your minds a bit on that one.
Well, when we got our faculty data specifically, we immediately shared that back with the faculty and sent it to the faculty senate and to the dean so that they could see it. And I met with all those groups as well with the student data and shared that with them. So we didn't waste any time getting that back to them because we wanted to be fresh in their mind. Hey, we just asked you about this, so here's what we found out. So the turnaround we tried to make very quick. And from there, we also parlayed that with, hearing this, here's our proposal, and this is what we're going to go forward with. Again, so that, people were thinking about it and on board. So our survey was end of last year in November and December, and we were proposing our new plan by February. So it was a very quick turnaround.
That's great.
And Tyler, did you share like the raw results or did you like edit it or
Oh, it was definitely summarized. I mean, you just give people the raw data, it's just overload. So I've always
yep.
found it best in those situations to here's what's important in a one sheet response of what we found and why it's important.
Did you get any requests for the like from the skeptics for like we want to see it all or
No, I don't know, maybe I'm just a trustworthy face. People just, believe me, but no,
we
no
all
one
want to be
ever,
Tyler.
yeah, no one really wanted to challenge it. They were just like, okay, well, sounds good.
In our
Cool.
case, the student survey wrapped up when in about March, April. Sally, am I remembering correctly?
End of March, yeah.
End of March. So the April was spent analyzing and they were writing the faculty survey at the same time. We're trying to get the faculty survey out in the fall first thing. So this communication back to faculty will absolutely be what Tyler has said, quick turnaround, quick back. Um, we haven't done any communication back to the students after the survey, but that is something we'll do with the Student Government Association in the fall as well.
Great. Well, let's start moving in. We've got a few questions already coming in from our audience in the chat. So would love to start moving into those. And then audience members, please keep them coming. But one question was, what advice would you give for faculty and staff that aren't interested in providing feedback?
You want us to give advice to the faculty or to you?
To our colleagues on the call.
To how to engage those folks?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is tricky. Um, I- if you've tried surveys and they're not working, and you've tried conversations and that's not working, maybe try the leadership of the unit, bring those folks into a call, have conversations with that group. Lisa, you might have ideas about this too. You've managed these processes many times. But those are, I mean, I would definitely start with the leaders and then ask them for other suggestions if they don't have the input. Or when you've gotten the input, you need to make decisions. Make sure you're giving them the plans and a chance to respond.
Cattle prods work for me. I don't. I mean, if they don't provide feedback, I mean, to a certain point, I'm not going to go out there and try to drag it out of them. If they don't want to provide feedback, and I guess they're okay with it. And if they're not okay with it and they want to come to me on the back end after all the things are decided and all the things are done, we'll happily provide them all of the emails and information that was previously sent to show them where we made those attempts and that remind them that the next time we solicit feedback, they are more than welcome to do so on the front end, and we will take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I think I just want to bring those threads together of the panel's answers to a couple of different questions. And Tyler, you mentioned earlier that you had lots of anecdotal feedback, and there's power in kind of compiling that feedback that you hear from your advisors, from your department chairs, even about the process. Usually, we can find something that matters to the folks who are kind of not participating, whether formally, right? And we can even position that as a question, like, gosh, we sent out this course scheduling survey. We noticed we didn't get any faculty input or staff input. Let us, right, like, let's back up a step and let's talk about that and try and figure out, there must be an underlying fear of some sort. And then to Tyler's point, and Jill's point about kind of transparency in the process, kind of here's how we're going to move forward, whether or not, right, it's either with the faculty, with the feedback, or without, right, and kind of laying out and being transparent about not only what feedback was or wasn't collected, but also what the timeline is going to be, and kind of sticking to that. So I think those can be really powerful steps as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it goes back to I think Jill, kind of the lesson learned that you shared of like, okay, well, if we're going to delay faculty involvement from a survey perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean we should delay the here's the plan and here's what you can expect coming next, because then that helps with the like swirling of like, are you going to take my feedback? Is it going to do anything? And so I think that, my sense is the earlier you can kind of say, this is the roadmap for what we're doing, and this is what we've decided and what we haven't decided, can really, sounds like, help with some of those challenges. And then to Tyler's point, it also helps kind of hold people accountable to, you knew what the plan was and you knew where your opportunities to engage were. And, it's your choice to engage as you see fit. So awesome.
I do see a trust element here too. If you're asking for feedback, make sure you respond to that feedback, because if you collect feedback and you don't provide any visual response, if nothing changes based on a response, people quit being engaged. So you have to begin with trust and continue with trust, and make sure you're hearing what's being given to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my sense is too that like where there are environments where that trust needs to be built, that some of that like more transparent sharing and more like if you want to see all the data, here it is, or not to say that we shouldn't do the one-page summary, but with environments where trust has been more of a challenge, sort of the like analyze it for yourself, or could be helpful as well. All right. Lisa, do we have any other questions from our crew?
I think we've captured them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Not seeing any, and we'll take any last minute questions. I've got one, I do have one more, but it's a logistics question about how to access the survey, which we're going to cover here in just a moment. Okay, I don't see any others coming in. So why don't we go ahead and transition to the resource and how to get that resource. I'm going to go ahead and pop the link here back in the deck. And then, of course, if you have any questions, our panelists can see them in the chat. And if we do have another minute or so, we can always answer those as well. But our next steps here, you can access the Feedback Toolkit, which is going to include everything we just talked about, the surveys, both for students and faculty, the focus group facilitation guides, those sample course schedules that Elizabeth was talking about, and the posters to help provide a visual to kind of foster conversation. We have it in the student resource. You can use it with faculty as well. And I posted something in the chat for those of you who are exploring pathways and kind of rebuilding particular pathways and thinking about the students that you currently have and what kind of schedule they need. It can be a really helpful departmental resource to talk about with students as well. And I think that just lends context for this whole conversation. Of course, what we're talking about today is kind of a campus-wide scheduling initiative, but oftentimes these initiatives start in small pockets, right? In departments or a particular program who has they have a particular question. It can kind of start anywhere, right? And we can gather data in that way via small scale or large scale. So hopefully you'll find ways to use these resources in a variety of ways. And we're happy to dialogue with you about the resources as well. So if you'd like implementation tips, reach out to us. We have information on the page about how to get in touch with us, but we're always here. And we have a cohort of 20 institutions, some of that you met here today, folks that I know who are so gracious and happy to spread the knowledge related to their experience. And if there's questions that you didn't feel comfortable posing here today for large group but want to connect on a one-on-one, we're happy to make that connection as well. We do have a question whether or not we can put the link in the chat. Elizabeth, sure. Do you mind helping with that?
I don't have the ability to put it in the chat, but I think the issue might be the uppercase versus lowercase. So, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. One of our next steps. So, oh my gosh, let me do this again. Pardon. I'm gonna get all the way to here. Here we are, and we are, this is the second webinar. We have two more webinars because we have more resources to share. So Elizabeth mentioned our first webinar, which is around case making. And so if you are about to start this work on your campus, we have a whole PowerPoint deck filled with statistics and resources to kind of help you introduce the initiative to your campus colleagues, and start to make the case around course scheduling as a powerful student success tool on your campus. So you are welcome. That is already available. You're welcome to download that. Today is obviously the second webinar, and then we have an exciting webinar coming up on using data to drive decisions, and we're going to be releasing a data guide for you all to help use as a resource. And we're talking about getting into not just the student and faculty feedback that we talked about today, but other course scheduling metrics and data that you will be using to consider along with the student and faculty input, right? And how we have a more data informed course schedule. And then the final webinar in September is that we're going to be releasing some communication tools that help impact scheduling reform on your campus, and some planning tools that I think you will find very useful. We've already been testing them in the cohort, and we've received tremendous feedback already. So hope you will consider joining us for that one as well. All right. Are there any other questions from the group before we close out today? All right, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Panel, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and your expertise. Elizabeth, thank you for helping us design such powerful and impactful resources. We really do appreciate it. Hope to see you on the next webinar at the end of July. And if you're joining us for the Ask You Summer Meeting in New Orleans, bring a fan because it's going to be warm, but we're going to have a great time. And there are more course scheduling conversations and resources to be had there as well. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.